want to say thank you very much to Alice and Lydia for all of your help throughout. It's been a fantastic project, learned a lot, couldn't have been possible without your support. To dive into the analysis, my presentation seeks to answer the impact of Unitu. So 3 questions that come up today. First, what is Unitu? Second, why Unitu? And third, how can policies be enacted to kind of make the impact larger? How have I contributed to this discussion? Well, I've looked at data from across the departments, both from the NSS surveys, from Unitu itself, and then I've interviewed people involved and kind of brought together those disparate sources to answer the big picture question. So what is Unitu? Basically, it's kind of like Facebook, but for like talking to lecturers. Like you post on there, a student posts a question, a professor posts an answer, everyone gets to see it. There's like boards and groups and stuff. Some quick examples of this. Someone in the law department asked what exam timetables would look like, and 370 people saw this, 66 comments. It's used across departments, some more than others. A lot of it's anonymous, which is a good thing, because it probably means you get more candid questions. 60% use it, which is decent, but like decent. I only go to be decent. Why is this particularly valuable to the LSE then? Well, because 50% of people don't think that it's clear how their feedback has been answered upon, and 40% of people don't feel part of a community. Kind of obvious to imagine here, if you're part of the people that's getting a question answered, you feel more like a community. So what's the case against Unitu? I thought it was most eruditely described by this student. It's another website to keep track of this, yeah? And on the whole, whatever we can do with Unitu can probably be decently approximated by a well-designed Moodle forum or two. I think this is the argument against Unitu at its strongest. So why do I disagree with this? First of all, while it's true that a product could be reproduced by a lecturer, it often isn't. The advantage of Unitu is that it's something which is standardized throughout all in a department. So instead of leaving it up to the discretion of the professor, you assume that it's just kind of working well at all levels. Second, there's obvious network economies, which is that, that post about law timetables, 400 people viewed it. Instead of a professor getting emailed the same question 400 times, there's obvious economies of scale there. So now let's look at the data. There's a whole load of people sign up initially, so you jump massively, and then it stays flat for the rest of the year. But what we see is interesting is engagement doesn't follow a similar pattern. It's not some fad where loads of people sign up and then everyone just goes home again afterwards. Rather, it's kind of consistently used throughout the year, probably used most in January because of like COVID change runs and stuff. So it's interesting that there is not a drop-off of initial engagement. Also, more stats showing that once people are on the platform, they engage with it. So I think it's clear to say here that the problem that's faced with Unitu isn't getting people on, isn't fatigue, because once people are on the software, they use it. The challenge is getting them on, and it's how do we stop these numbers from being so stagnant throughout the whole year? Now, 3 solutions, I think, and 3 policies, which I think would be to add the value of this. So first of all, departments need to learn from each other. There's massive heterogeneity between the departments, right? We saw earlier, where you've got 70% of lawyers on, or 55% of economists, there's a big difference here, and that's a lot. And there's lots of different department level schemes from which, like, I think there's kind of obvious benefits from kind of learning across the board there. There's different programs, these different programs so far. I think the first obvious policy here is unifying the online spaces and establishing Unitu as the platform for all communication. So what does this look like, right? So currently, like, several of my lecturers use Canva for Q&A, others used email, or communications with offer holders also used email. So it is true, the concern that student raised earlier, where there are like multiple different platforms and there is fatigue, but all of those could be unified, and they could be unified to Unitu. And the advantage of doing that is you just don't have to repeat ask questions. I'm sure, like, once something is asked, everyone can see it, and that's a massive advantage. So the first thing, I think, is pushing everything onto Unitu, then you get the spillover effect. Then the next thing is consistently promoting Unitu and establishing it as the norm. So how's this done? Well, at every chance where there's communication, it should be made clear that this is happening over Unitu. So during income week, you tell students that this is what you use. During term, you ask us on Unitu. Professors looking for feedback, Unitu. Just establish it kind of end to end, and you want to sell it at every point in the process. Also want to note here that like some departments have been really excellent at this. This is one thing from the surveys, where like in some places there've been numerous induction sessions with students in the department. That's something that you could collaborate across the board. Yeah, so to note there, Unitu good, 3 policies. First of all, is just kind of generally chatting to people in other departments. Second is pushing everything on there. And third is consistently selling it from start till finish. thank you very much for listening. And thank you very much for Alice and Lydia yet again. And please do let me know any questions.